I am doing pretty good. The show is late. It was going to be late on a Tuesday, but it's on Wednesday because, and you're not in Phoenix anymore, but of course you probably heard, the whole country heard about major flooding going on out here.
That was insanity. I'm glad neither of us were there for that, but pretty insane. Those photos and videos showing the freeways completely flooded and people whitewater rafting and everything down the streets. So.
And I've experienced none of it because I came in a day later and everything's gone. It just looks like maybe a regular rainstorm had happened. But I was sitting on the beach in San Diego, and of course I had seen the news, and my flight started getting delayed further and further, and I was getting more and more bummed about having to leave the incredible beach, and it struck me. Actually, it was my girlfriend. Stay, you gotta stay another day. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So
I'm glad your girlfriend is taking the lead and she's striking you.
Yeah, I know, because it was a brilliant idea, and I'm not going to apologize for the wonderful time I had, an extra day of beach and sun in beautiful San Diego.
That's right. Sounds pretty awesome. And you escaped the flood, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to escape floods. So our guest today is kind of cool. We've got Lakita Adams. So last week we talked about, and the spacing out was a lot about these sightings in North Carolina. And North Carolina has been a hot spot for a long time. Maureen Ellsbury, our colleague, talked about a UFO sighting they had while filming Uncovering Aliens. That's right? Sometimes I mix it up and I call it Aliens Uncovered. Uncover or Aliens come first?
Yeah, we should keep a tally of all the different names you use.
Yeah, a lot of them. Did I get it right this time?
No, it's Undressing Aliens.
No, it's not. I know it's not.
I wanted to see how far I could take you, but yes, Uncovering Aliens.
Oh, so I did get it right. Yay.
Hooray.
So, they filmed something in North Carolina. I don't know. You've written about the Myrtle Beach, and you seem to be very excited. You've written quite a few stories about Myrtle Beach and their museum out there. Exhibit.
It seems like a cool museum, and that's in South Carolina. But
right.
But I would love to go to that museum and visit it, and it's been very popular. So written about that museum a lot. But you're right, man. Lots of activity over there on the East Coast there in the Carolinas.
Yeah, so we talked to Lakita about it because although, like you say, Myrtle Beach is in South Carolina, it's very close to North Carolina and where these sightings take place. And I asked her about the museum and her interactions, which is kind of interesting. So we've got a great show coming up on that, or interview.
Sounds like a great show.
But first, we talk UFO news, and I'm just going to say, I don't know if I said this last, we tried for some reason to stick to one story a week, but it was hard, if not impossible, for us to do so. So we'll just call it the UFO news highlights. We won't read all the news, but just the great ones. Well, there's just too much news, and I gotta share it with our wonderful listening audience.
Well, you're insane, and I'm still gonna call you a cheater.
Okay. Then let's start the cheating.
All right.
Begin your UFO story for the week.
The story I want to mention, Alejandro, I'm just really loving this because the photos are really cool. I want to talk about this diamond-shaped UFO in New Jersey.
Cool.
This is another one of Roger Marsh's great MUFON sighting reports, a sighting report that was filed with the Mutual UFO Network. And this is from New Jersey, and this guy, the witness who managed to take these 3 photos of this unusual diamond-shaped UFO, was out walking his dog. And so many UFO sighting reports are coming in from people out walking their dogs, because that's when they're out, you're looking around, you're waiting for your dog to do their business, and you're like looking around. So I get it. I get that's a perfect time to see something in the sky. This was back last month on August 29th, but he was walking his dog and he saw this weird diamond-shaped object. He assumed it was like a remote control aircraft or something, but then he saw it and took out his cell phone, took some pictures of it, and he described it as being really bizarre in its shape, diamond-shaped. He said it had a concave toward the bottom. He said the back looked like it was something out of a movie, like it would have engines, but he said the way the object was moving was not moving the way it would if these were actually engines. But he submitted 3 photos to MUFON and a really cool and detailed sketch too of what his interpretation of this object was. It looks very futuristic and pretty cool. But apparently New Jersey MUFON is investigating this, and Alejandro, these are some sweet photos.
The photos and the sketches are super cool. Like you said, these sketches are make this like futuristic kind of space scooter. It's a super cool, fun looking craft, and very strange. I mean, as far as potential terrestrial answers, perhaps a balloon? What do you think?
Well, when I initially saw the photos, again, I have no sense of scale on this, and it's very distorted and tough to tell the actual shape of this. But especially with the description of the concave bottom and just the way this thing appears, I could conceive of it being like a Chinese lantern, a sky lantern, because it kind of looks like a paper lantern, and the side we're seeing almost looks like what these sky lanterns look like if when you light it you're not careful and part of the balloon catches fire a little bit. Looks like a little burning on the side of a paper lantern. That's what the appearance suggests to me. But again, I have no sense of scale. I don't know what this object looked like in the sky or how it moved. So.
Yeah, either way, such weird pictures. Really cool pictures. Yeah, this one's fun. This one's really cool. I'm glad you talked about this one.
And the fact that he included the sketch. The sketch is so cool.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear the investigation more about that because there's so little information, which is often the case with these MUFON reports, that it's really exciting when someone does an investigation and gets more info, because sometimes they easily figure out what it is, but sometimes it just adds more mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully they're able to come up with something.
Mm-hmm. Which, a case that was investigated and just added more mystery, is another one which has been a big one for us this week, which is in, North Carolina again. So, and I talked to Lakita a little bit more about this case later on, but, this is this possible see-through or cloaked advanced craft, potentially, at least that's what, the investigators and the witness feel it is, that this guy with military training, in fact, he's a contractor with the military. Right now he's an instructor for close combat training, which is pretty cool. And he went outside with his telescope to get a shot of the moon, and he always has his night vision goggles with him. And he caught something weird, something that he was scanning the sky with his goggles, and he saw this thing. So he trained his monocular, night vision monocular, that was hooked up to video camera on it. And it's a strange configuration of lights that were completely silent, that he says he feels were about at 5,000 feet and could not be seen with the naked eye, only with the night vision. And really interesting. I think this is a great video. And what's fun is we've got a couple experts to comment on it, and they're fighting back and forth. They're disagreeing with each other.
Well, it's so difficult with these. I mean, we've said it before. Some of the coolest stuff you'll see in terms of unidentified flying objects, in my personal opinion, is with the aid of night vision. There's so many interesting things going on up there that really have no explanation as far as the technology that we're aware of. And but with that being said, it's also difficult to make out detail. It's difficult because of the technology that creates night vision. There can be a lot of optical illusions created. So I don't have any idea what this object is. I think it's a fun video, and I do hope that they're able to determine something more from it, but I don't know if they'll be able to.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, essentially, as far as not being able to see it by the naked eye, I did some investigation, and I found out that military aircraft are being fitted with lights that can go into a covert mode, which can only be seen by night vision, which makes a lot of sense. So that could be what is happening here. And that would make a lot of sense. Mark D'Antonio feels that it's not one large craft, that it is two craft, one in front of the other, that are like at 30,000 feet. Of course, Mark D'Antonio is the MUFON optical analyst, and we had him on the show even recently. We've had him a lot. So that's what he thinks it is, just a refueling thing going on at 30,000 feet with their covert lights on. And his argument is you couldn't hear it because it was so far away. That's a great possibility, but we went, and we also got a response from Ben Hansen, who works with night optics and night vision equipment. He says he totally disagrees that is one large object, most likely. Some of his things, one of his arguments is that it looks like the craft makes a turn, and that turn would not be such a tight turn. Were this to be a large refueling mission, and there wouldn't be a turn being made. Also, he feels that it would be something that would be able to be heard. And I kind of agree with that. When you look at the video, it's complete silence. And even when jets are really high in the sky, of course, even commercial airplanes, you can hear those eventually. And this person said they watched it for 14 minutes. He thinks that maybe there is a cloaking going on because, you watch the stars, and I was watching very closely, and their luminosity did not decrease. You would think if something went in front of the star, it would flicker at least a little, and you don't see any of that. So he feels it's much more mysterious than Mark does, and they're still kind of going back and forth on it. So we'll see. I don't know if we will receive more information, but regardless, a very credible witness and some really interesting video.
Definitely interesting video. I love it. I love the back and forth. There's a lot of speculation that we can do, but bottom line is it's a great video.
Yeah, and even with even if it is like even worst case scenario, it's the least mysterious. What Mark is saying, it's a refueling going on with covert lights. That's kind of cool, but very possibly something a little more mysterious here. So I wanted to ask, because I was out, for a couple days, obviously, and wanted to get your opinion. So there's a couple other videos we posted. One, it looks like from the Kennewick area, and I think in Washington, but that one's suspected to be a remote control helicopter. Is that true?
Well, what the news station said was that it's I think a remote controlled airplane, and they don't specify how they reached that conclusion, but they did talk to a local expert, somebody from a retailer that sells remote controlled craft. So potentially they had that person say that this is what it was. As far as 100% confirmation, I don't actually have that, or if they're just making assumptions, but I think they're probably right. I mean, that's most likely what it is.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. And finally, before we go, I just want to get your opinion on this one, just to see what your thoughts are. Of course, last week there was stories about Queensland, Australia, and how there's an increase in sightings, and the UFO research organization out there had sent some pictures to the media, and one of these pictures is from Wooloowin, Australia, and it looks like a very vivid image of some sort of craft in the sky, and it's just a really interesting picture that I can't come up with, what that might be. Maybe a balloon or something? I was wondering if you had thoughts on that one.
It's a flying coffee bean.
That's what it looks like.
That, or maybe like an eyeglasses case or something. I don't know. It's a really, really bizarre object. Yeah, I mean, that's a striking photo. It really is.
Yeah. Another one kind of looks like an odd-shaped one, but a really cool-shaped Chinese lantern. But, the flying coffee bean's a really weird one from Queensland.
Yeah, that's one I don't have any guess as to what that could be. You're right. Yeah. The other lantern thing, it looks like a light. It looks like a photoshopped street lamp or house light in the sky. But who knows? That one's weird. But yeah, I have no idea about the nice coffee bean flying in the sky. Cool photos.
Yeah. Though. Cool photos from Queensland. So really cool stuff. Lots of news going on. And of course, lots of, I think sightings, pictures and videos that are a little harder to explain, than the average, which is always exciting because so many times the news features stuff that is too easily identified. So of course, I know Jason, you probably get just as excited as I do when we get these weirder ones.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so good to see some of these finally coming forward. UFO news has been a little slow lately, but in that slow news, we've had some more interesting videos and photos than we have typically. And yeah, I agree with you on that. So I'd like to say let's keep it going, but it's out of our control.
Yeah, and finally, I want to get your reaction to this because this is so cool, I think. Is that the Arizona Central, the Arizona Republic is the paper, but it's a conglomeration of TV and newspaper, local newspaper out here in Arizona. And they're reporting on the International UFO Congress winning the Guinness World Record as the largest UFO conference in the world. How cool is that?
That's pretty darn cool. I mean, we already knew it, but it's nice to get the recognition, pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, now it's more official. I guess it's official as you can get. I don't know what other official organization there is. Really, that is the World Records people. So really awesome. Of course, the Arizona Republic has written about this, but we haven't seen the actual book yet. I think I'm going to go look for it in just a few minutes. So we'll take a look and confirm we're in there. But how cool is that?
That's really cool. And so I hope that encourages more people to come out and be part of that world record-setting conference.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet. All right. Well, thank you for talking some UFO news with me there, Jason.
You bet, buddy. And I'll be ready next week now that I know that we're just throwing it out the window and we're going to cheat all the time and talk about all sorts of news. So that'll be fun next week.
Yeah, that's okay. You had some more info on some of these cases, and it worked out beautifully, my friend. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you, buddy.
But for now, let's talk with Lakita Adams. I am very happy and excited to have on Lakita Adams, the director of the North Carolina chapter of MUFON. Hello.
Hello, Alejandro. How are you?
I am doing very well. I love your name, by the way, Lakita. Am I saying it correctly?
You are. That is correct.
Good.
And thank you. Thank you.
Because it sounds pretty that way, Lakita.
Yes.
What are the roots of the name, by the way?
You know, I have searched for many years to find that, and it is actually a family name that was handed down. And I'm not really sure where it came from. I can't find it anywhere, really. So
another mystery.
Yes, another mystery.
Speaking of mysteries, you all have been keeping really busy, and I think this is nothing new, an abundance of UFO sightings in North Carolina, but just it popped up again because you were in the media recently, and it seems like there's been a lot of sightings going on recently, but about, as far as North Carolina being a hot spot, which it seems like it is, how long has that been the case, or do you think maybe it's been decades?
Well, we have recently, I would say in the past couple of years, we've had a lot of activity on the coastal area. Of course, the South Carolina coast gets it too, but this year, like in the past 6 months, we've had, a couple of months where there was increased sightings. I mean, almost double of what we would normally get. And so it sort of corresponds with the sightings and the reports that come in. What they are, well, I think that given we have 8 military bases here in North Carolina, several of which are in the coastal area, I think there is the great possibility that it is some of it is military activity. We kind of look at the different videos, and after a while you can tell the difference between Chinese lanterns and the other kind of lights that are reported. Movement, will tell you much. Wind direction will tell you a lot, too, with the candle lanterns, but they're not all candle lanterns. We really don't know. We really are still searching. But military bases have, on occasion, confirmed to us that they were having military exercises, and that, in fact, what people were describing would be consistent with the type of exercises they were running.
Interesting.
Yes. It's not too often we can get a confirmation like that, but
right.
A field investigator actually did get that confirmation in June, because we had sort of a mini flap in June, and it did correspond to the military exercises.
Makes sense. So we'll talk more in detail about some of these cases, and I'll ask you in particular, because there's a few really interesting ones, television shows who have been out there. There's also been an Encounters UFO exhibit at Myrtle Beach that's been set up, and I think it was at one of the. Is it a standalone kind of thing, or was it part of a museum?
It's actually, I have been there. I went there last year when it opened, and it is in a huge shopping complex. And I think they did a pretty good job for what they were trying to do. I mean, I have never seen anything like this. It is set up as a museum type, and they explore the different facets of ufology. There's a section that actually runs MUFON cases.
Oh, cool.
And yes, and there's interactive videos, which, as a former teacher, I really like that kind of stuff. And I felt that it was a good try at doing it. It needs to be bigger and more, expanded, more in depth. But they did a good job. But they also covered the cultural side of it too, with the movies, and they had some of the props, from some of the sci-fi movies. But they do tell the difference. That's what I respected about it. They tell you which is the science fiction and which is the real stuff, the real reports. And so I was pleased with that.
Yeah, now some of the sightings, I mean, that's part of the area, up all along the beach there where there's a lot of sightings. Did they come in and set up there because of a lot of sightings in the area, or was that just a coincidence?
I think that it did have something to do with it. When I heard about the museum being opened, I tried to, research and find out, where it was coming from, and it's part of a company that does exhibits that are movable. And the plan to move this one, was, I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is on that, but I think that is the plan. And the company that has done this has done other types of exhibits that are moved, to different places in the world, actually. For people to see. But for now, I think this one is still at Myrtle Beach.
Now, I think it opened up in April, if that's correct. And its open...
Last year.
Oh, of last year? Do you think
did.
it's responsible for an increase in sightings at all?
Well, now that's a good question. I think sometimes that the cultural influences may have something to do with people reporting sightings. But it's hard to say for sure. It certainly brings more awareness, and I know that they get a lot of visitors in that area. So it's in a very high traffic area. I haven't heard about how many people have actually attended that, but it's a good place to do that, because TV shows have filmed episodes in that area. The Chasing Aliens or the Chasing UFOs. No, I think it's the Chasing Aliens.
Chasing UFOs and Uncovering Aliens.
Uncovering Aliens. Yes, yes. There's so many.
I know. I get confused all the time. I mean, the people who listen to the show know I get the titles of these shows mixed up all the time.
Well, that's because there's so many, which I think speaks to the tremendous interest in the subject.
Right.
It's all over.
Yeah, and they all kind of use similar words. They just mix them up. Chasing UFOs, uncovering files, uncovering aliens.
Right.
You know, so it's easy to do, to mix it up. So before we get into some of these cases recently, I'm really curious about how you got involved with this field.
Yes, I think we all have our stories of what made us get that curiosity.
Yeah.
And mine actually started when I was 9 years old, and I had a sighting with my parents, which was a fireball, essentially, and it was one of those situations where, when we saw it, it was almost like time stood still as we watched it go across the sky. My father, who had been in the Navy and the Air Force, knew that it was not a meteor, not a typical meteor, and he came in and called the sheriff's department. I remember standing beside him because it was a very scary thing for me and my mom and dad. And but he called, and the sheriff said they'd had many reports and that they thought it was a meteor. But I guess I have to say that that impacted me so deeply to see that in the sky, that after that I was always interested in space and in cosmic things, and particularly in unidentified objects in the sky. As a teenager in high school, I wrote my first research paper.
Really?
Yes. It's I was fortunately my teacher, told me that I could do that. And as I look back on that time now, I mean, that was, right after, it hadn't been very many years since the Robertson panel had, essentially laid down some restrictions about even discussing the subject. And, in schools particularly, it was not supposed to be any part, which I find that very interesting, in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, I did not come to any conclusion in that research paper, which, and I'm still looking for answers. But for many years, I've always had an interest, and about 13 years ago, I started going to MUFON meetings here in North Carolina with a friend who had been a field investigator in the 90s. She had an incredible sighting, multi-witness sighting here in Asheboro, and I was so impressed, and she took me to meetings, and I learned about MUFON, but it took me 10 years to decide if I wanted to be involved with MUFON.
Oh, really?
I wanted to make sure that it was a scientific research. It was, and I know there are many aspects to this subject, and, I'm interested in all of them, but I really wanted to do, the scientific approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I was convinced, and that it was a credible organization, and I took the test and became a field investigator. I'm into my 4th year, and I have been state director for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been very, it's the most fascinating of all things I've ever studied, of course. But So that's kind of how I got involved.
Yeah.
I don't really jump into things, and I have the same approach to cases. I try to be extremely careful and look at every aspect I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. So
I have an open mind about it. I have an open mind, but a very skeptical eye.
Mm-hmm.
So.
When you got involved as a state director, I always hear over and over again that it's overwhelming how much work that position actually is.
Well, there's a lot of administrative work to do. I mean, it is my job to assign cases. I have 8 field investigators at this point, and there's reports to read, to approve, and frankly, you have to really want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a burning curiosity to learn about it, and so I guess that's why I do this. I mean, it is pretty much a full-time job for me. But the part that I really enjoy is, I mean, as a former teacher, I taught ESL, I taught English. But for many years, I was actually an environmental educator at the state zoo here in our state.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so most of my teaching experience has been with that. But when I had the chance to become an investigator and look into this, I knew that it was something, that I had wanted to do for a long time and was able to do it. So I don't mind the work. I just strive to really submit good information because this is the only way we're going to find out anything is to, learn from the data. And the other part, I do get a lot of requests, a lot of emails. Israel and I both have through our website and from people with contact experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And this has actually been what has taken most of my time because I try to do what is best for them and get them to resources that can be of help to them.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, actually, there's a new organization has several people. It's called Free, and this is it's the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and they actually have resources for people to contact. For example, a hypnotherapist. I have a lot of requests for that, and we don't have any that we've been able to locate in our state. So this is a real area of need that I've learned over the last few years. So that's something that I put a lot of time into. But I also, when I became state director, I wanted to do a class on UFOs at the community college where I taught. My husband and I both taught there for many years. And they will not allow me to do it.
Oh, no.
They won't touch the subject, but Alejandro, this is the case most everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's a subject that still has a taboo status, and even though they know me, they know I'm a very grounded person and a factual person. They will not do it. But I have put together a 90-slide presentation on UFOs. It's history. I use some of the real photos, the old ones, the ones that have been analyzed, and I use the best cases over the years. And anyway, I do this program. I put it out there, for people, and I have been doing this, and I really enjoy it. In June I went to a library in a nearby county, and they asked me to come as part of their science program, their science reading program, which I was really happy to get that because, I have gotten requests where, actually they just wanted something kind of scary or, mysterious type of program. But this was a lot of kids in the audience, and some teachers and parents, and it was very interesting. Really good questions. I had teenagers coming up to me with sketches that they had drawn of things they had seen, and I just think that building awareness of the subject is kind of the platform for better knowledge about it. So this is a part I really enjoy about being a state director, able to go and, talk to people and do these, factual presentations. So just to get it straight. It's a lot of misinformation. And
so even though you look at this with a kind of a skeptic eye, which I feel personally is important, I would assume, or I'm guessing that you do feel that that UFOs pose a genuine mystery.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Because, of course, a lot of the skeptics, and I put that in quotes because they call themselves that, but they're really often very close-minded people who they kind of blow it off as it is nothing mysterious. But unfortunately, I find those people typically have not done very much research either.
Exactly. It's I find that very intellectually dishonest for someone to proclaim something simply because that's the way they feel about it. I think you have to research. You have to read, and I spent the last 15 years doing that, and I continue to do that. I have several books lined up that I want to get to, actually, but I have been careful, too, about what I read, and I tried to, read the nonfiction and the really credible, or what I, perceived as credible people, researchers who had done the work and been in the archives and gone over, piece by piece. That's what we all must do to learn more.
Yeah. Well,
but it's complicated. It's a very complicated subject.
And one of the most difficult parts, one of the most complicated, are those abduction scenarios or the abduction experiences that people have. And you sound kind of like your approach is like I did, as skeptical. And when I became a MUFON investigator, I figured, I didn't have any expectations of having anything to do with abductions, nor did I know MUFON had anything to do with it, because I was extremely skeptical of those claims at the time. But then I started to meet those people, and because I think I'm a patient person and open-minded and I listen, that luckily many of these people who felt they had these experiences felt comfortable sharing those with me, and it made me think really hard to think that, what the heck is this? Did you approach it the same? Were you really skeptical? Did you have problems with the idea of alien abduction at first?
Sure. Years ago, when I started reading Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber and David Jacobs and John Mack, I had never talked with anyone, but I read. And I remember thinking, well, there's something here. It's maybe we can't really identify it yet, but there is something here, and it deserves to be looked at. It deserves attention, and it deserves serious attention. Since then, since becoming an investigator like you, I've met and talked with many, many people, and people that, I have talked to several times and have gotten to know. And, this is has done a lot, yes, to convince me that, we're dealing with something that we don't have knowledge of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I have been convinced there is something, and I think it's important. I think it's significant. But that's about as far as I have gotten. I do have great empathy for people reporting these experiences, and so I have found that being a good listener, that's very important and can mean a lot, particularly if they've never talked to anybody else about it. And I don't judge. I listen without judging, and when we can, Israel and I have worked on this quite a bit. When we can, we put people together and let them share. That I think that is an important thing to do. It's a helpful thing, apparently, to do.
So Israel, who you keep mentioning, is your assistant director, and we'll get into it because he had a sighting out there. But I want to kind of talk about this recent kind of increase of UFO sightings off the beaches out there. And for instance, Chasing UFOs came out there, and I think that's maybe the first, you could correct me if I'm wrong, TV show to come out there to look at this. And why did they go out? What prompted them to go out there?
Now, okay. This is the one with Daryl Sims.
That's Uncovering Aliens.
Uncovering. Okay, this is the one I saw.
Okay, cool. Because that's the one with Maureen, who's my colleague here at Open Minds. Yeah.
Yes. And Steve Jones is in that too, right?
That's the one.
Yes, and Mike Barra. Okay, they went to Myrtle Beach because of all the sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview was with a gentleman who had actually posted quite a few videos that he had captured. And, as I said, Myrtle Beach, and Wilmington are not that far apart, but all along the coast there, we've had these sightings. But I thought they did a good job of covering that one. I don't know that it has been explained. I mean, we still get these reports.
Has Gary Travis, I think he was the guy who submitted those, has he submitted those to MUFON? Have you guys officially investigated some of his videos?
Don't think we have his.
Mm-hmm.
We have gotten some from Brandon Brodsky, who is in the Wilmington area, and I say his name because he's posted many on YouTube, I think, videos, and we get a lot of those. And as I said, I can't, after reviewing so many, you can sometimes tell the difference, but
because I think you can with Chinese lanterns. There's a certain color, there's a flickering. I agree, in the movement. But Uncovering Aliens, according to Maureen, they actually videotaped something they couldn't explain.
Yes. There is a little clip of that on the show.
And it's like a red orb, I think?
Yes, it was overhead, and they were videotaping it, and then another orb moved into the picture. And they didn't know what it was. This is what a lot of people have encountered.
Mm-hmm. Do you think
to Israel's his sighting?
Yeah. So what he went out there about a year ago because he had heard about the sightings. He said from a professor of theology at Wilmington University. So they who are skeptics told him about that. And he went out there and he saw something similar in September of 2013, an orange orb, I think he said. Right.
He had set up his camera and he had stayed up, I think, 2.5 hours. And when he packed it up, then he saw it. Then it came over him, which was, interesting. And, some people say that they feel that these orbs sense what they're doing, I mean, I have heard that reported many times. It's really interesting.
Well, it sounds like most of these sightings, at least the ones that I've been looking at recently, and Israel's, were over the ocean.
Yes.
Have you gotten cases of Chinese lanterns over the ocean?
None that I can think of specifically. Typically, those are over land.
Right.
we do get those. But I do not recall any over the ocean.
Right, because that's one of the things I was thinking of when I'm looking at these videos, is that they're over the ocean, which doesn't completely rule out. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. I don't know if people are launching them from boats or something, but it doesn't seem like that's a common thing to be launching them over the ocean.
No, I wouldn't think so. Although they might be released somewhere else and, go in that direction, depending on how the wind is blowing at the time. But, with some of the orange orbs, the movements and the quickness, it's simply not consistent with a Chinese lantern. So, it's the lanterns move slowly.
Right.
Usually. And they usually move, together or, depending on how the time between release of each one. But some are not consistent with that. You just could,
What are some of those movements that have been described to you that help lead you to believe they are not Chinese lanterns?
Well, similar to the movements that in the clip from Uncovering Aliens, they would move quickly into place, like in rows. We get that a lot, where there will be one or two together, and then, others will join it, and they will move in different directions. Now, that is not consistent with a Chinese lantern or something of that sort. I wouldn't even think it would be consistent with some kind of RC device. It would really depend. But the ocean, the ones over the ocean, I think there's a possibility that's military. I mean, we do have exercises that are out over the ocean off our coast. And if it is, then it's, it appears to be some kind of advanced, technology of some kind, and it may be that. It may be something that we're just not aware of. There's several possibilities here, but it's really been quite a phenomenon. The orange orbs.
Like you said, there in mid-June, there was you had a mini flap, and there was a spokesperson from Camp Lejeune who had told you that there were military exercises.
Yes.
Were you the one who contacted them, and were they forthcoming? Did they?
Actually, field investigator from Charlotte, Ken Bates, had the cases.
Okay.
There were maybe 8 cases from that area, and I assigned them to him because they were all related, or from the same area and same time period, and so that was one of the first calls he made to Camp Lejeune, where a spokeswoman told him that she could confirm that they were doing exercises.
So yeah,
it's not often that we can get a confirmation like that.
Right. And then there was another. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was helpful to hear that. At least it gave us some information about the possibility.
Right. Yeah, and it is always good to put to bed. I mean, to rest. If it is something conventional. However, then what is it? WWAY, I think, covered those sightings in early August. Do you think those were the same objects?
Well, they sound similar. Now, I think I had sent you the news story from the same that same TV station,
right?
Where Camp Lejeune had, announced for the residents not to be upset that they were doing the military exercises for an extended period into the night, I think up until 2 o'clock in the morning, and that there might be some loud noises, but they wanted to, kind of preempt that to say, hey, it's us, and don't be alarmed. So I found that interesting, and that coincided, with the sightings, and because it was in that time period.
Yeah, although I don't know. Do you think, like they said, they're going to extend the training to Friday to 2 a.m., and I think that the people said they started seeing them on Saturday morning.
Well, I think from the news article, the way I understood it, it was they were continuing the period of doing the military exercises, and that they would be extending them into the mornings.
Yeah.
So I think it extended over a few more days. That was, kind of the way it was exactly 2 months before that.
Yeah.
The consistency here and, the almost schedule kind of thing here, leads me to believe that, this may have been some of what people saw.
Yeah, that's what makes it really difficult. Do you think then that the majority of what people are reporting out there is military?
Alejandro, I do not know that.
Yeah.
I just think that, when we get a case, I always try to look at every possible thing that it could be. I mean, that's what, as investigators, that's what we do. And, this can't be overlooked. I mean, it is,
right.
It's part of it. And I think that, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that some of what people are seeing is military exercises going on. It's really hard to, I'm sure you found this true when you were investigating, to really give a 100% disposition to a case. I mean, it's almost, and so, we have to go with what, is available to us, and, but there are mysterious sightings of objects that can't be explained in conventional terms. I mean, we do get those. We had a photo, an interesting photo. I don't know if you saw it. It was earlier this year, but it was going around to several people, and I got an email forwarded from Mark D'Antonio, who had been asked to look at the photo, which originated in Raleigh, North Carolina. It'd been reported to New Fork, not to us, but it'd been submitted, and it shows 4 UFOs outside of a high-rise building. They're kind of white and cloud-like, but definitely, looked disc-like. And it was a big mystery, and Mark was sent the photo, and he had an idea of what he thought it was, and he turned out to be right. But 2 investigators here from Raleigh, actually, we nailed down the place where it was, and which was not easy because there were no, it's just a high-rise building, but the reporter said he took it on a balcony. And, okay, when we investigated it, we found out that the photo could not have been taken from the balcony of the building because there's not a balcony, and it was taken through a glass, and it was a reflection from the lighting fixtures inside these offices.
Yeah.
But it was a very convincing photo, but that's an example of one that, was able to say definitely, what was going on there. That doesn't happen too often.
Right.
But that was kind of, it's nice to be able to do that once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it took some investigating to get that done. But we did. And,
well, I want to ask about another case too, and unfortunately for some listeners who want to hear just about, the real mysterious ones, this one's mysterious. This is a really cool one.
Yeah.
We just posted today, although it seems like you and the investigators and the witness feel pretty strongly that it's probably some sort of very advanced military aircraft.
Okay.
But this is, from May. Ken, who you talked about, one of your investigators had sent this to me because he just thought I'd really like this. And he's right. I do really like this.
Yes.
Such an interesting video. And this is, the guy took it in May. He's a military contractor who, I guess is outside with his night vision, military grade. He's got at least a couple things. And
yes, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, but also just so the listeners know, some background on it. And he got this weird set of lights, and it is strange that this set of lights he got videoed through his night vision. He could only see it with night vision. It made no sound and it flew right over him. In the video, you can't hear any sound from the craft at all. Even though you can hear him whispering and stuff like that. When you look at the video, and you know what it does to me too, it seems like perhaps you can see through the craft.
Yes, I agree.
Really strange. Do you agree with that one?
I do. I agree that that's what it appears to be happening in the picture. And, I think that, actually I had a case a couple of years ago that also led me to believe that, there's some sort of cloaking technology that is being used. I don't know this for a fact, but it's something that's been researched, right here in our state at Duke for many years. And I do feel that happens sometimes. It's out there, I think, which makes our job even harder.
Well, and that, all of these things, Chinese lanterns, drones, advanced technology, especially drones, make the job a lot harder.
Yes. You have to be more diligent, and then there's, the area that we will just not know about. We just, and, but that video, is one of the, most amazing I've seen in a while. Mm-hmm. And, this is a very credible witness. In fact, I had a case, 3 years ago that he had reported, and I talked with him then. And at the time, he had only seen something through the night vision, and the last thing he said to me was, "I'm going to get more equipment and see if I can capture something." Well, he has done that. He has followed up, and so this is, I think, a really good case.
Mm-hmm. He sounds like an impressive person. He talks about how he is a long-distance shooter. He's a skydiver. He's now doing instruction for close military combat.
Yes.
So it sounds very credible.
Yeah, I think we could call him a trained observer, yes. Mm-hmm. And just, using the night vision, too. I mean, that opens up a whole other layer of objects, apparently. So, I think that video is pretty interesting to watch. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we've totally explained it, but
I guess because who knows what it is.
It's pretty rare.
I've sent some messages out. Hopefully, I'll hear from Ben Hansen, who is very familiar with night vision, and Mark D'Antonio, of course. To see what they have to say, and I'm sure they'll answer eventually, but I wanted to get it up for people to see now. I did find that military aircraft, these days, they can run their lights in an IR-only mode, where they can not be seen visual, only through night vision. But that only explains one of the weird things going on with this. That it's completely silent just over him is extraordinary, I think.
It is. It is. Yeah, that video is very interesting. And I'm interested to see what Mark thinks about it.
What have been, in your mind, some of the highlights, some of the most fascinating, or even if there's just one that comes to your mind at this point, cases you've investigated or has come across while you've been a state director out there?
Yes, I have had some that I still think about, even though they've been closed. I mentioned to you cases that I felt had shown evidence of some sort of cloaking technology. A couple of years ago, I had a case from Hickory from a gentleman who was a scientist. He'd been in the scientific field for many years. He is a trained observer, very skeptical about UFOs. Well, he saw one, and the description intrigued me because I knew it was different. But he was actually traveling down the road. This was near Hickory in the mountain area, western North Carolina. And he saw a very large object in the sky approaching. It turned and then proceeded to shrink down, in his perception, to a small ball. Now, I'm not sure, what would make it look that way. Why would he perceive it that way? He said that it didn't accelerate. It wasn't that it accelerated and went away. It was that it, essentially shrunk down. Now, to me, that sounds like, a possibility for some sort of cloaking device being used. And, because the witness was a trained observer and knew knew what he was looking at was really unusual, he actually tried to investigate it himself and apparently made some connections with some friends that worked for some aeronautical company, and they told him that they thought that it was probably some sort of metamaterial cloaking technology being used, and it made sense. And so I did some research and actually found that a 370-foot blimp had been released on the North Carolina coast, like it was, like a month before his sighting report, and just felt that was pretty interesting. I don't know that that's what he saw, but this particular blimp was to be used in combat, and it was, one of those high altitude surveillance communications. And, you can look it up online. It was called the Blue Devil 2. And Duke University, which, it's the Duke Blue Devils, well, this is where a lot of intense research has been going on with the cloaking technology, as well as other places in the world, too. I mean, there's, in the United States, it's several. But now, I was trying to put that together. Do I know that that's what it is, or that that's what he saw? I don't know that for sure, but it's just a possibility that would fit with what he saw. But I thought that was a very, very interesting case.
Yeah. So, yeah, those things are pretty big, right? The Deep Blue Devil is...
Yep, 370 feet long.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's huge.
It is. Yeah.
So where do you feel this is all headed, or maybe where do you hope this is all headed?
I hope it leads to more knowledge about the subject. I really wish that this is something that would be studied in an academic setting, that it would be considered a serious subject. But it's complicated because we have all these cultural influences and perceptions of it. So it makes it very, very complicated to do the nuts and bolts part. But all of it is a part. I mean, if you're a field investigator, then you are investigating paranormal things too. I mean, there's no escaping it, and you are investigating contact and abduction cases. That is part of this. It was a particular interest for me too, and I tried to educate myself on that particular aspect. But it continues to be just a big mystery, and so I guess I'm hoping that at some point we will, as a society, just put this in its place in some sort of scientific way of searching. At this point, it's really difficult because of the status of the subject, and so I guess more awareness. I'm hoping it will lead to more awareness.
Yeah, and assuming you feel this way, that what you do, what MUFON does, is important. Why do you think it's important?
Well, I think the information that we get on this subject is sometimes so turned around. It can be completely given in a disinformational way. So I think that what we need really is to concentrate on the real information, and that what we do in MUFON with the cases, yes, we get many cases that it's pretty easy to tell what it is. If it lines up with where Venus was at the time, then there's a pretty good chance the object that they saw was Venus. And so, by using these tools, we can do that. But it's the data, at some point, looking at the data and seeing if it, we can find any sort of trends or, any information. That's a painstaking way to do it, but I think that, it's the way we have to do it. And also, I think, MUFON does a great service to people who have had experiences. There's not really, very many places that people can even talk to someone else about it. So I think that is a critical thing, an important thing, and helpful. It's a helpful thing in this respect.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, because as you've probably experienced, people who have sightings, it's a very impactful experience, and often their whole worldview is turned upside down, and they need someone to talk to.
Exactly. And, many times I have heard this, from people who've confided in me that, friends and family will either not talk about it, or they don't want you to talk about it, and they're uncomfortable with it. So it's a great relief, I find, for many people who just want to tell somebody. It's in the telling that is very helpful, and it's almost an affirmation that, hey, I'm not crazy, and so I think that probably has done more good and been more help than MUFON would probably even realize. But
I agree.
I'm learning, I'm learning that, and it has been quite a learning experience, I must say.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been very interesting, and do you have monthly meetings?
We have been having meetings quarterly.
Oh, okay.
So our next meeting is actually scheduled for Asheville on September 27th.
Okay.
And Kent Center is going to be speaking.
Great.
And,
he's a great guy.
Yes.
And MUFON-NC.com, I think, is your website for North Carolina MUFON?
That's correct. Israel Curiel, the public relations director, does an excellent job. He has really built quite a following, and he tries to keep it fresh with articles and up-to-date sightings on there, too. So, and people can also comment. They can leave their comments on there. So it's interactive, too.
Cool. Yeah, so, and I met both of you at the North Carolina conference at Kent Center, coincidentally put together. So, and I had a lot of fun talking to you guys, and a lot of fun talking to Israel, too. So,
yes, we enjoyed that so much, and it was so nice to meet you and everyone.
Yeah.
It was, being able to talk to Leslie Kane was very nice, and as well as all the others. Yes.
Yeah, it was an incredible event.
Yes. Once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much. And
Alejandro, thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you so much to Lakita for being on the show and giving us some insight into those wild and mysterious and cool sightings in North Carolina. So I'm thinking that I'll have more North Carolina field investigators on soon to talk some more about these sightings, because there's so many and they're so interesting. Remember, you can go to MUFON-NC.com to read more about North Carolina MUFON, especially if you're in the area, because like Lakita said, they have quarterly meetings where they have some great speakers. And of course, you could go to openminds.tv to read more about those cases that we had talked about, because we've been writing a lot on North Carolina UFOs, especially this new see-through night vision one, but also others. And we've gotten so many, like I said, responses from people out in the public commenting on their own sightings in North Carolina. So really, really cool stuff. Evolving stories day by day. So you go check out the latest and greatest on those when you get a chance. OpenMinds.tv. Also, don't forget to register for the Congress. That's coming up. Now that we are in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the largest UFO conference, people are going to be swarming to the conference even more than they were before. So sign up, go register, and you definitely want to be there. It's going to be a ton of fun. If you go to the UFOcongress.com, you will find a list of the speakers that we have thus far. We have the majority of them confirmed, waiting to hear back on some others. And what we're waiting to hear back on is very exciting, by the way. So lots of really, really cool stuff planned there. So check that out. Also, we've got New Spacing Out all the time. So we have a New Spacing Out episode last week where we talked about North Carolina, and this week and other cases. This week we'll talk about this night vision one and other cases. So be sure to check that out. And of course, Jason is doing his remote reporting from the Center of the Mysterious Universe in Idaho. I just dubbed it that. I'm not sure if there are very many mysterious things going on in Idaho, but I'm sure now that Jason is there, that there certainly will be an increase, especially with Littlefoot sightings. His little furry dogs, when he's walking them, are a sight to behold, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of cryptoid reports on those little furry cute creatures. Be sure to join us next week when we will have another show, most likely on Monday, like we're supposed to. And so that's really cool. And let's see what else. I think that's everything. Go to openminds.tv to watch all of our great videos and Spacing Out and read our news. And there's also a link to the Congress there so you could register. I also want to thank Caleb Hanks, who makes the open and close music. You could go to